Okay, so I'm going to move you over here. Here we go. Okay, so directions. Please get out your notebooks, pencils, calculators, and 2 different colored markers. So make sure you have something to write on, to take notes with, a pencil, and make sure you have a calculator. The 2 different colored markers, we'll use that for different types of terms. So if you like to draw boxes and triangles or circles, you can do that. Or, that bell is obnoxious. Or you can go ahead and use 2 different colors. So this says solve the following problem while waiting for us to begin class. So hopefully at this point you have this one written down. So we're gonna go ahead and get started. I've got 1 minus 7v minus 2v equals -1 minus AV. So when you're looking at an equation like this, I'm noticing a couple of different terms. So I'm gonna go ahead and start by taking one color and highlighting all of my constant terms. And again, my constant terms are those terms that don't have a variable in them. I'm going to take my other color and highlight my variable terms, and those are my terms that have the letter in them, the variable. I'm going to go ahead and draw my line down the middle so I can remember to do my steps on both sides. Now I'm ready to go. So when you're looking at a multi-step equation like this, you want to look at each side separately. So I'm going to look at the left side first. That's an L for left, then I'm going to draw an R for right. So if I'm looking at the left side, you want to look and say, okay, is there anything that I can simplify on this side of the equation? So when I'm looking at the number 1 or my yellow terms, I don't see any other yellows, so I'm just going to go ahead and bring down my 1. Or the positive 1, I'm just going to go ahead and bring it down. And I'm bringing it down because there's no other yellows on the left side. I can't combine it with anything else. But then I'm also noticing on the left side, I've got -7v and -2v. So I can combine those. So in your calculator, if you pick it up, you can type in, and let me know if you don't know where that negative button is. Remember, it looks like this next to your decimal point on your calculator. You can type in -7 minus 2. That's all you have to do to combine those 2 variable terms. I get -9v. And I'm crossing those out now, not because I got rid of them, not because they went anywhere, just because I simplified them. So I'm going to get rid of those so I know that, oh, that's where they went. I combined them. So that's what we call combining like terms. Variable terms are in common, constants are in common, but you can't combine a variable term and a constant term through addition or subtraction. So that left side is done. Then the next step is to look at your right side and say, okay, is there anything I can simplify on that side? I've got 1 constant and 1 variable. There's nothing I can simplify. I can't merge those together or anything. So I'm just going to go ahead and bring those 2 terms down. Now that I'm at this point, I'm going to go ahead and grab one of my my yellow or whatever I used for my constants. I'm going to go ahead and highlight my constants again. I'm going to take my green and highlight my variable terms. All right, once you get to this point where you've got a constant and a variable on the left, a constant and a variable on the right, that's everything simplified, so I can start moving stuff around the equal sign. My end goal is to get all of my greens or my variable terms on one side of the equal sign, all of my yellow terms or my constants on the other side. So when I get to this term or get to this point where I've got 2 on either side, I'm going to look at my variable terms. I'm going to start moving those around first. So if I'm looking at -9v and -8v, I want you to think which one is smaller. And this is tricky because some people are like, well, 8's smaller than 9, so -8. But if we're thinking about a number line, looking on a number line, you think when you're comparing negative numbers, think about which one's further from 0. So if we had a number line, 0 would be here, -5, you know, there'd be numbers in between here. But if we had -8, -9 would be further away on a number line. So -9 is smaller. So basically what I want to do with that information, I want to say, okay, I want to move this -9 to this side. And I'm doing that because it's my smaller variable term. And we're going to have plenty of practice with this. So if you're not getting it right away, don't worry. So I'm noticing that this is a negative term. So again, when you're highlighting, make sure you're carrying those negative signs with those terms. So that's a -9. To move a negative term, all you have to do is add it to both sides. So I'm going to go ahead and cross that out. I'm going to bring down my constant, which is 1. I'm going to bring down my other constant of -1. And then over here, I've got -8v plus 9v. So in your calculator, if you type in -8 plus 9, you should get +1. So +1v. Now I'm just going to write v, and the reason I'm doing that is because anytime we see a variable by itself, it's always implied or assumed that there's a 1 in front of there. So anytime you see a variable by itself, it's always got an invisible 1 in front of it. All right, now I'm going to grab my highlighter again, and this is just so you guys can see. Once we get to this step, it's kind of easier, but so I've gotten all my variable terms on the right side. Now I've got to take all of my constants and move them to the left side. So I need to, again, I want yellows on one side, greens on the other. Well, I've already got all my greens on the right, so I want to go ahead and I want to move this -1 over to the left side. I can do that by, again, when I want to move a negative term, I can do the opposite and add it to both sides. So 1 plus 1 gives me 2. And then I'm going to bring down my variable. And v is already by itself, so we don't have anything else we need to do to solve that one. So v equals 2. We solve for a missing variable. We are good to go on this problem. And again, solving multi-step equations, it's a process. So make sure that we're paying attention, staying organized, and asking questions if you don't know where I'm getting a number. So do you have any questions right now as far as this problem goes on why I did something? All right, I'm going to go ahead to the next one then. Okay, combining like terms and equations. Again, we practiced this yesterday. This is something that we'll work on a lot this year, but making sure we have strong algebra skills for the 9th grade is really important. So this stuff is what you'll see in the 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th grade. So this type of skill, if you can get this down this 8th grade year, that's what we want. All right, so when you're looking at an equation like this, I want you to take one of your colors, so whatever color or a shape if you want to box it in, and go ahead and highlight all of your variable terms. Notice that I am including those negative signs. So if I have a -6v, -v, and -2v. So if you don't include those, that could mess up your whole answer. So I'm going to go ahead and highlight my constants in green, and then I'm going to draw my line down the middle. All right. Once we've identified constants and variables, this is the time where we start combining or simplifying. So I'm going to look at my left side. So I'm going to write again, left, right. So the left side of my equal sign, I've got -6v and -v. Then I want you to think to yourself, can I combine those? Those are like terms. We're talking about combining like terms. So yes, we can combine them because they're the same color, they're the same type of term. All right, so -6v minus v. And again, this v is the same thing as -1v. So all you have to do is in your calculator, enter -6 minus 1, and you're going to get -7v. And again, I'm going to cross those out just so I know in my head that I simplified them. All right, everything's simplified on the left side, so I'm going to go over to my right side. I'm looking and I see multiple greens, but I only see one yellow. So I'm going to go ahead and bring down my -2v just because it's all by itself. There's nothing I can simplify at this point right now. But I'm noticing a lot of green terms, or constants, so I can go ahead and combine those. So I'm going to go ahead and pick up my calculator and type in 3 minus 7. Again, if you're just following that right side of the equal sign, I'm just combining those green terms. So 3 minus 7 plus 14. you should get positive 10. If you don't, make sure you're saying something and I can help you with the calculator if that's an issue. All right, so this problem is a little bit different than what we've seen before. It's different because typically we're left with two constants and a variable term, but with this problem, we're left with two variable terms and one constant. So we've got all of our greens or our constants are on the right side. So again, our goal is to get all of the yellows on one side, all of the greens on the other. Well, I don't want to have to move my greens around anymore, so I'm going to keep those there. I'm going to go ahead and I want to get that negative 2v to the other side. So again, I told you guys, if you want to move a negative term, you can go ahead and do the opposite, which is adding it. So a negative and a positive cancel. So then in your calculator, if I'm looking back on my left side, I've got negative 7 plus 2. If you enter that in your calculator, you should get negative 5v equals, and then I'm just going to bring down my 10. Now I've just got a one-step equation. I have successfully gotten all of my yellows on one side, all of my greens on the other side. And again, that's variables and constants. Our goal, we also want to solve for v. So I'm going to go ahead. I've got negative 5v equals 10. To solve for v, I'm going to go ahead and divide both sides by negative 5. Don't forget that negative sign. So if you divided both sides by 5, you wouldn't get v by itself yet. You got to divide both sides by negative 5. Okay, so negative 5 divided by negative 5v divided by negative 5 gives me v by itself. 10 divided by negative 5 in your calculators is going to give you negative 2. All right. Any questions about that one? Again, watching and practicing is like the best thing you can do. So watching, practicing writing it yourself, practicing staying organized, that's really going to help you. All right, if there's no questions, we'll go on to the next one. So this is our last combining like terms problem for today. So I'm going to go ahead and highlight my variable terms in yellow. So we've got m, negative 3m, 3m, and negative 7m. So again, this is why the highlighting is helpful. All right, because we've got a lot of terms we're working with. Okay, so now that I've highlighted, I'm going to look at my left side and then I'm going to look at my right side. So if I'm looking at my left side, I've got m plus 4 minus 3m. So I'm noticing based on my color coding, I've only got one green or one constant. So I'm just going to go ahead and move that down right now because I can't simplify it on the left side right now. If I'm looking at just the left side, I can simplify m and negative 3m. I can combine those like terms. They are the same color, so they're both variable terms. I can combine both of those. So I've got m and negative 3m. And remember, whenever you see a variable by itself, it's got an implied 1 in the front of it. So in your calculator, you can just type in 1 minus 3. And we're going to get negative 2m. So all I did was I combined m and negative 3m, and I got negative 2m. That's it. Next, I'm going to go ahead and I'm noticing I've only got one green, so I'm just going to bring him down. So I've got negative 12. But then I do have two yellow terms on the right side as well. So I'm looking at that. I've got 3m and negative 7m. If I want to go ahead and combine those terms in my calculator, I can just do 3 minus 7. And that's going to give me negative, I guess since I had the other one in red, I'll do this one in red too. It's going to give me negative 4m. I'm just going to cross those out. Again, they didn't go anywhere. I'm just crossing them out. So I remember in my head, where did that negative 4 come from? Oh yeah, I combined, I simplified. So next, I'm going to go ahead and grab my highlighter again. I'm going to highlight my variable terms. Do not forget to highlight or include that negative sign in there. And then I'm going to go ahead and highlight my greens, or I mean my constants, excuse me. All right, if I'm looking at my left side, everything's simplified. Right side, everything's simplified. I've only got one of each type of term. I've got a constant and a variable on either side of the equal sign. When I'm at this point, that's when I go ahead and I can start moving stuff around. Step one, I'm going to look at my variable terms. So if I'm looking at negative 2m and negative 4m, which one is smaller? That's what I want you guys to think. So negative 4m is smaller than negative 2m. Again, think about when you're comparing negative numbers, which one is further from 0? So negative 4 is smaller. So I'm going to go ahead and add 4m to both sides. Again, I'm adding it because that's a negative 4m and a positive 4m is going to cancel. I'm trying to move it to the left side. All right, I'm going to bring down my constant. I've got 4, and then I've got negative 2m plus 4m. On my calculator, if I type in negative 2 plus 4, it gives me positive 2. So I've got positive 2m equals, and then I'm going to bring down this constant as well. All right, I'm going to pick up my highlighter again, and I'm going to highlight my variable terms. I'm going to highlight my constant terms. Okay, so I've got all of my yellows or my variable terms on the left side. So that means I need to make all of my constants go to the right side. So I need to move 4 to the right side. I can do that since there's no sign in front of it, so it is technically a positive 4. So to get 4 to the other side, I'm going to go ahead and subtract 4 from both sides. Again, if I'm doing something and you're not sure why I'm doing it, or any questions at all, make sure you're asking me. So plus 4, minus 4, positive 4, negative 4, those cancel. I'm going to go ahead and bring down 2m. And then I've got negative 12 minus 4. If you enter that in your calculator, negative 12 minus 4, you're going to get negative 16. Again, you can use your calculator for everything in the 8th grade, so make sure you're taking advantage of that. And finally, I know that when I've got a coefficient or a number right next to a variable, it is being multiplied. So 2m is the same thing as 2 times m. So to get m by itself, I'm going to divide both sides by 2. I'm going to be left with m equals negative 16 divided by 2, which gives me negative 8. All right. I'm going to wait for a second, see if you have any questions. Let you get that written down. All right. So we're going to kind of shift gears a little bit. We're going to move to the distributive property in combining like terms. So yes, we're still doing the combining like terms stuff, but I wanted to review the distributive property with you guys. So on Thursday of last week, we discussed the distributive property a little bit. So we kind of reviewed this skill. This is a skill that you learned in like the 6th grade, I believe. Worked on it in the 7th grade, and now here it is again. It's not going anywhere. I promise you're going to use it in high school all the time. So it's not going anywhere, so might as well embrace it. Make sure you know how to do it. So I'm just going to show you how this is. There's no equal sign, so I don't see any. So this is an expression. The difference between an expression and an equation. An expression does not have an equal sign, so you're not solving, you're just simplifying. When you've got an equal sign, you're comparing two equal expressions. So I've got 10 and I've got negative 2x. And I'm just highlighting them so you can see the two different types of terms that we've got. So whenever you see something like this in an equation, so whenever you see a number like 3 or any number directly in front of parentheses, that means you've got to simplify that. That means you've got to use the distributive property. What that means is this 3 is being multiplied by the two terms within the parentheses. So again, we're distributing that 3 to any term that's inside the parentheses. But right now we've just got two terms inside the parentheses, so I'm distributing it inside of those parentheses. So I've got 3 times 10, which gives me 30. And I've got 3 times negative 2x. Well, 3 times negative 2 is negative 6. And then I just have to tag on my x at the end. And that's it. So when I say simplify, is there anything we can simplify? If you see the distributive property, that means that you need to simplify it. Okay? All right. Combining like terms, or distributive property and combining like terms. So we're going to go ahead and start highlighting. So I'm going to take one of my colors, so I'm going to take yellow, and I highlight all of my variable terms. And I'm going to take my other color, and I'm going to take green and highlight all of my constant terms. Notice that I'm not highlighting 4. That's because if I'm looking, remember we want to look at left and right. So I'm going to say, okay, looking at the left side, is there anything I can simplify on this side? Yes, there is. Whenever you see the distributive, remember distributive property, not distributive. Whenever you see parentheses, even since the 5th grade, you guys have been talking about PEMDAS, order of operations. When you see those parentheses, you got to get rid of them. We can't move on in the problem if we still have parentheses. So think of order of operations. Think back to your old math skills. Again, we're taking old skills, we're merging them with new skills. So I'm going to go ahead and take 4 times 3m, which is going to give me 12m. So again, whenever you see a number in front of parentheses, you're multiplying it to those terms inside. And I've got 4 times negative 3, which is negative 12, equals, and then everything simplified on the left side. So then I can go ahead and look at the right side. Negative 39 plus 3m. I see 2 different types of terms. I cannot combine those. I cannot simplify. So I'm just going to go ahead and move them down. So I've got negative 39 plus 3m. All right. I'm going to grab my highlighter. So I've got 12m and 3m. And I'm going to go ahead and take negative 12 and negative 39. So I've identified my constants and my variables. Remember, this is really important to know the difference between the two. Variable terms have the letter. So in this case, it's m. It's our variable. And then constants do not. All right. So now that I've got both sides simplified, I've got 2 types of terms on either side of the equal sign. I can go ahead and start moving stuff around the equal sign, getting all my yellows or variable terms on one side, all of my constants or greens on the other. So I'm going to look at my variable terms. I've got 12m and 3m. I want you to think which one is smaller. So 3 is smaller than 12. So I'm going to go ahead and move 3m to this side. So again, the opposite of adding or a positive 3m is negative 3m or subtracting 3m. That's going to cancel. I'm going to be left with 12m minus 3m. And then that's going to be left with 9m. I'm going to bring down my negative 12. And I'm going to bring down that constant, negative 39. All right, I'm going to take my highlighter again. So I'm noticing I've got all of my variable terms are my yellows on one side, but I need to go ahead and I need to move those greens on the left to the right because I can't solve for m if I've got stuff on the same side as m. So I want to go ahead and move that negative 12. And I can't just move it, I have to use math. I have to move it using the opposite operation. So this is a negative 12, minus 12, whatever you want to call it. So I'm going to go ahead and add 12 to both sides. So that's going to cancel. I'm going to go ahead. So I'm going to bring down my 9m equals, and then what is negative 39 plus 12? So I want you to take your calculators. Negative 39 plus 12 is going to give you negative 27. And finally, we are on our last step. We have gotten all of our constants on the right side. We've gotten all of our variables on the other. So our last step, we can go ahead and solve for m. I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to divide both sides by 9. And the reason I'm dividing both sides by 9 is this 9m is 9 times m. Well, if I take 9m divided by 9, I just get 1m, or m by itself. And then in my calculator, if I enter negative 27 divided by 9, you should get negative 3. All right, are there any questions over this problem? We're going to practice more next week. We're going to start working towards applications as well. But if there's any questions about this problem, make sure you're asking me. All right, last one for today. We're going to go ahead and highlight our constants. So I've got 7 and 34. I'm going to highlight my variable terms, 2n and 4n. And I'm not highlighting that 8 because I've got to distribute that. So let's go ahead and get this one written down. So again, if I'm looking at left side versus right side, that left side, I'm looking, okay, is there anything that can be simplified? No, I've got a constant and a variable term. So I'm just going to go ahead and bring those down. Then I'm looking at the right side, I'm noticing I've got some parentheses and a number in front. So that means I've got to use the distributive property. So anytime you see the distributive property, anytime you see parentheses, you've got to get rid of them before you can keep solving. So I'm going to go ahead and distribute that 8 through multiplication. Remember, whenever you see a number right in front, you're multiplying it to those terms within the parentheses. So I'm going to take 8 times 7. So 8 times 7. It's going to give you 56. And then 8 times 4n. So what is 8 times 4? So we've got 32n. All right, now that we're at this point, we've got negative 34 and 56. We've got 2n and 32n. So we've got our variables highlighted and our constants highlighted. We've got one of each on either side of the equal sign, so now we can start moving stuff around. Again, I'm going to look for my smaller variable term. So what is smaller? 2n or 32n? 2 is smaller than 32, so I'm going to go ahead and since this is a positive, I'm going to go ahead and subtract 2n from both sides. Oh, I don't know why I did that, sorry. I'm going to cross this out. I'm going to subtract 2n from either side. So I'm going to bring down negative 34 equals, I'm going to bring down my 56, and then 32n minus 2n equals 30n. Finally, I'm going to highlight my constants. I'm going to highlight my variable terms. Now I've got all of my greens or my variable terms on the right side. I need to move 56 over there, over to the left, because I want to get all yellows on one side. So I'm going to go ahead and subtract 56 from either side. And again, this is a positive 56, so a positive and a negative cancel. Again, whatever I have to do to both sides, one side I have to do to the other side. So negative 34 minus 56, so negative 34 minus 56, that's going to give me negative 90. And then I'm going to bring down my 30n. Now I've got all of my variable terms on one side, all of my constants on the other side. I can go ahead and solve for that missing variable now. So I know that when I've got a coefficient like 30 in front of a variable, to get in by itself, I'm going to go ahead and divide both sides by 30. And I'm dividing because I'm undoing that multiplication between the 30 and the n. So 30n divided by 30, gives me n by itself, and then negative 90 divided by 30 is going to give me negative 3. All right, are there any questions about this one?